Today, I'll be talking about the things I think about when I approach the bot lane 2v2 that will help you understand how to be more consistent in your gameplay, no matter the matchup or elo you find yourself in. So there's going to be a lot of yapping. Although we'll be focusing primarily on the interactions between the ADCs and supports, the concepts you learn can be used for every role and for every stage of the game, no matter how much League of Legends changes throughout the years from different patches. This video will be heavily focused on micro and developing your fundamentals and mechanics as a player. So without further ado, let's begin. Every champion has a range of damage that comes with their individual kits. Being able to sneak in your damage while also avoiding the enemy's damage comes down to how well you can predict and how fast you can react to the small changes that take place during the laning phase. Every action you do and every movement you make has a consequence that can be taken advantage of. The three main things you should look out for are minions, spell cooldowns, and positioning. The first basic training mechanic involves minions. If an ADC walks up to auto a low HP minion, they'll be momentarily self-rooted during their attack animation, which gives the opponent the perfect window to land their ability. If timed correctly, the ADC will then be forced to either take the poke and secure the minion, or dodge the ability and consequently lose the minion. A good player will constantly be in position to always go for this kind of punish, and although denying one minion might not seem like a lot, throughout the course of the laning phase, you'll find that you are 10 CS, 20 CS, 30 CS up, which means that even if both sides are 0-0 in score, there will be a more hidden gold leak growing in the background, which will lead to you eventually stat checking your opponents after completing your items much faster than they can. Another very common play regarding minions is knowing when you reach level 2. Whichever side gets to level 2 first in a 2v2 will have access to one more ability each, which will obviously give them more tools to get their damage off before the opponent can answer back. When there's a support and an ADC in the lane, you will reach level 2 after 9 minions go down. So that means after the 6 minions die in the first wave and 3 minions die in the second wave, you'll both hit level 2. If you know that you'll hit this level of spike first due to using your spells or auto attacks to thin the wave ahead of time, you can look for an aggressive auto angle right as the 9th minion is about to go down so that you're in range to use your level advantage with the timing of your walk up. If you know that you're not going to hit level 2 first, then the play is to usually back off completely and let the wave push into you, so that the enemies can't aggressively look for a fight in that small window. You could try to use level up timings at any point in the game by just checking your EXP bar on the bottom of the screen, but the 9 minions to level 2 timing is the most commonly known one in the bot lane. The second basic training mechanic is to try to go for fights after the enemy has used up their abilities. Let's take Blitzcrank for example. When Blitzcrank has his Q hookup at level 1, his potential range of damage will look something like this. But the moment he uses that ability, his range will be drastically lowered to melee range for the next 20 seconds due to not having any more range abilities for a short period of time. A lot of newer players make the mistake of not taking advantage of the small window, likely due to inexperience and general fear of the unknown, but the longer you play and passively absorb information on how different champions and cooldowns work, you'll have to start being more aggressive in abusing these small windows, since mathematically, you'll have a better chance winning the fight if you engage when it's good for you and not when it's on the enemy's terms. The third basic training mechanic is positioning. Based on where you're standing in the lane in relation to the enemy, you can get a lot of cheeky damage off even if your range is the exact same or lower than the opponent. A good player will walk up when they think the enemy will be preoccupied by something else and back out of range before they have time to react. The goal is to constantly be as close to danger as possible, where you want the enemy to feel pressured at all times, where they can't retaliate back immediately without risking missing their spells. At the highest level, this leads to a positioning battle where both sides are trying to enter the enemy's range while also being ready to walk out of it at a moment's notice, which leads to a sort of dance of constant spacing. Now that we're done with the basics, let's get more specific with the concepts. The best way to understand how to get better at spacing is to know what your win conditions are going into a fight. The more you know what the enemy is trying to do, the better you'll be able to figure out how to play around it. This means that you want to drag them into a range where you'll be able to do damage safely while also presenting yourself as a target vulnerable enough so that the enemy stays interested in fighting with you in the first place. It's all about figuring out their intentions and using that as a basis for when you should push and fall back. Just reacting to what they do won't be fast enough, so you need to develop a level of prediction through experience by constantly putting yourself in situations where you'll be forced to limit test or learn through failure. I'll play this following clip in regular speed first before I explain my entire thought process behind it. Going into this fight, we're losing pretty hard bot. My Corki is 1-4, I'm 0-3, and the enemy Lucian is 4-0, with both of the bot laners having completed the first item and boots while we're still stuck on components. Our tower's getting low while our top side is about to clean up the fight, and we'll be able to push afterwards. Whichever team gets a turret first will secure the feat, so both sides are on a time limit to break it right away. I use my Bard ultimate to stall for a few more seconds, hoping that my top side will rush the tower. Right now, I'm playing with the expectation that the enemy also knows they want to break the tower first, so I'm going to use that as my starting basis going into the fight. I know that if I back off here, then they'll be able to burst down the tower immediately, so right as the stasis wears off, I intentionally walk forward to bait myself the target to draw attention away from the objective for as long as I can. I see Nami going for a bubble, and from my current movement, I know that I won't be able to dodge it, so I try to answer back onto Lucian with a Q buffer, since he is very likely to try to burst me with his full combo while I'm stunned from the knockup. I managed to cancel his ultimate mid-cast and save myself while Nami chains her bubble CC with her ultimate. With my HP getting lower, I know that Lucian's going to turn on me the moment he comes out of stun, so I immediately make as much distance as I can away from Lucian's dash range with an E portal buffer, and he has to back out again to make sure that he doesn't take extra damage from the tower aggro. My Corki knows that there's going to be a brief window where Lucian has to spend time walking out of turret range, and since I managed to tank away both Lucian and Nami's ultimates along with the Nami bubble, he goes in to get his own damage off. I wait for a few moments for Lucian to go through a few more of his spells so that I don't get immediately bursted from going back into range, and I walk up to make it look like I'm helping my ADC. If you simplify the movement of the champions to vectors, Lucian will see Corki walking away to safety out of range, while the lower HP Bard is walking towards him into range. So the odds of him changing his focus onto me in that split second was very high due to the directional lines he initially thought we were on. But I intentionally baited him into thinking like this, and right before I expect Lucian to turn for me, I immediately retreat back again to try to lure him into tower a second time. And now Lucian's timing gets messed up, as you see that he cancels his auto attack on me at the very last second from me escaping out of range. He uses his dash to try to get an angle outside the turret, as Corki gets an extra auto attack, with Lucian still momentarily focused on the Bard. The enemies then try to hard commit onto us after being annoyingly spaced for a bit, but I managed to accurately predict all of their movements as I had to back off a third time away from tower. Nami gets a good bubble, but Lucian wasn't entirely sure if he was the one taking the tower or if Nami was, and Corki walks up once more to take advantage of the small window of uncertainty. Finally, Corki does the same thing I just did, where after Lucian spots me walking away as Corki walked forward, Lucian attempts one final time to get damage off, but Corki baits him into overextending one extra step forward, and we managed to get that crucial tower shot, which gives us a signal to all in. Through a combination of predicting what the enemy wanted to do, intuition on how I thought the Lucian would react to the changes in our positioning, and a little bit of luck, we managed to come out on top in the 2v2 even with a huge disadvantage in items through pure mechanical decision making. When you choose what to play in Champion Select, you ideally want to select a duo pair that allows your lane partner to utilize their kit to the fullest. Throughout the years, there's been a lot of combinations that synergize amazingly with each other, such as Lucian Nami, Ashe Seraphine, Caitlyn Lux, etc. But understanding why they work so well with each other can let you figure out how to maximize the damage or utility you bring to the team. Let's take Lucian Nami for example. Lucian has a passive where he does more damage if he is healed, shielded, or if an enemy gets CC'd. Which means that if Nami uses her heal on the Lucian, or lands a stun with her Kiro ultimate, Lucian will do a ton of damage. This along with Nami's E that empowers the next 3 attacks or abilities, which Lucian can easily proc with his double hit passive, means that every single one of Nami's abilities work perfectly to help Lucian carry the lane. Although having champion synergy is good, figuring out your teammates' intentions are just as important, so that you're ready before a fight even starts. In this clip, I see my Jhin slowly autoing the wave, and everyone knows that a Jhin will want to get that 4-shot auto attack burst on the enemy if they can. Although the 4-shot does a lot of damage, the enemy can also take advantage of that small window while he's reloading to try to trade back some damage of their own. I see my Jhin walking up aggressively towards the enemy ADC, which gives me the subtle hint that I should be ready for a potential engage. Even without exchanging any words or pings, by predicting what play my ADC was trying to do ahead of time and how the enemy might react as a result, I was already close enough in position to follow up if needed, but I didn't hard commit to the point where I couldn't change my mind until I saw the enemy trying to challenge the exchange. You have to be constantly aware of what your partner is doing. Just because you see a specific play angle, you can't expect everyone to suddenly know what you're thinking and be disappointed if they didn't follow you, especially in the middle of an intense team fight. In this clip, I get a good stun on the Jhin and see an angle, but although I know we can probably get the kill if we both push forward, I see my ADC backing out, which means that if I selfishly keep pushing alone, I'll be likely stuck in an isolated 1v2 and risk dying myself, so I respect the decision to retreat from the fight. Even if your ADC or support is objectively bad or makes mistakes over and over again, the only constant in every game is yourself, so it makes sense why you should do everything in your power to change how you react to situations instead of shifting the blame onto others and learning nothing from it. Having good synergy with your team is good, but knowing how to counter the enemy is just as important. Some champions just naturally counter others due to how their kits interact. It's why champions like Braum are insanely good against melee champions, since his entire kit revolves around being able to block and lock up targets at close range, but he usually performs worse against very long-range poke champions that can just avoid that range entirely. But like I said before, having a winning matchup on paper doesn't mean there aren't ways to outplay the opponent. You have to sometimes be able to turn the enemy's strength into their weakness by baiting them into using their cooldowns, which once again comes down to how accurately you can predict what the enemy is trying to do. You want the enemy to think that they have a perfect angle to go for an engage or land a skill shot, when in reality, they find that you're just barely out of range and now they have to go into the next fight with a spell on cooldown. Showing up to the fight with as many tools possible means that you'll consistently be better prepared in the long run, so remember to keep track of things like your spells, rune page, and sometimes even your auto attack cooldowns so that you can find out how to maximize your damage in a short period of time. Although the bot lane is a 2v2 matchup, there are going to be many times where you can position in a way that turns it into an isolated 1v2. An isolated 1v2 happens when one player is too far from a fight, where even though they might seem close enough to help, they're functionally AFK until they manage to walk back into a range where they're able to constructively use their spells again. The fight then just turns into a math check, since if you have one champion attacking with auto attacks, while the other side has two champions attacking with auto attacks, the overall difference in damage will only increase for each rotation of hits. It's why when you see someone alone for even a few seconds, you can sometimes straight up just sprint at them, knowing that you can beat them up with numbers before the backup can arrive. Even if every player is technically in range to do damage, some champions by design will do less than others due to having terrible early game or having kits that aren't suited for extended fights. So if you roughly know how strong everyone is, you can just stack check them completely and run them down, because that's just how math works sometimes. We're going to finish this video with some psychological habits I've seen throughout the years that people just naturally do during a game. The first one I wanted to talk about was target selection. Most of the time, you're going to want to have everyone bursting at the same target to finish off a player and turn the fight into a 2v1. But there's a weird thing that happens, at least in higher elos, where if the enemy assumes that you're out of range or is about to escape to safety, they'll immediately change to the next closest target, even if you're not actually gone. For example, in this clip, the enemy gets level 2 first and turns on me since I decide to stay alone. They obviously see me as a correct target since I'm isolated from my Ezreal, but I get ready to escape with an alcove portal. Watch how the moment I set up an escape path for myself, the enemy just kind of assumes I'm already gone and walks away from me, since it wouldn't make sense to use more resources on someone that's probably going to get away anyways. But they don't fully realize that I'm still there, and that small moment of confusion puts them in a weird position where now their focus gets separated just long enough for me to safely get out after landing the stun. Another example happens here, where after I aggressively go for the kill secure on Nico and stun the Sivir, I walk away from the fight while my Ezreal walks towards the fight. So Sivir mentally decides that Ezreal is the next best target, and right when I expect her to make that mental decision, I double back to help out my ADC. The second habit is just general tunnel vision, where a lot of the time, people will be so focused on doing a specific play that they'll just ignore everything happening around them. I always try to figure out what every player is thinking, so if I see someone obviously walking in a straight line to somewhere, then I'll do my absolute hardest to make sure they don't get there. Here I see my Jhin getting into a fight, and I see the enemy Lulu making a very obvious path to her ADC, so I opt to stop her from getting her spell rotations off instead of helping my Jhin with the Ashe. Jhin then goes for an ultimate, and I know that Lulu is going to try to block all the shots since she has more HP and needs to keep her ADC alive. But since I know that Lulu is completely locked into the play of blocking all the shots until Ashe can get to safety, I turn my damage onto her instead, and she doesn't realize that she's now the one in danger until it's too late, and goes on herself after wasting a flash. Here I see the enemy Caitlyn hitting me with autos, but then she changes her attention to my ADC getting lower on HP. That gives me the easy decision to ult her instead of the Poppy due to her obvious pathing, which gives us a combo afterwards before Caitlyn can use most of her abilities. The final habit I want to talk about is that players really like going for maximum range skill shots for some reason, or they intentionally try using spells in very small unexpected gaps. It's kind of interesting because once you get good enough at the game, you'll see less predictable skill shots in lane, as the enemy has to resort to going for more creative angles to land their poke or else they won't hit. It gets to the point where they just overthink it because they expect a specific level of skill coming from the opponent. It's always funny seeing someone trying to dodge my skill shot over and over again, only to realize that I'm just standing there watching them, since I know that they're going to try to dodge and I save it until the very last possible second. But you can take advantage of this small habit by intentionally putting yourself just barely out of range in these unexpected angle spots and make the enemy slowly keep wasting their skill shots after thinking that it was going to hit. I hope you enjoyed the video and learned something new. If you want to see more educational content like this, remember to check out the informational videos / coaching playlist on the channel, and I'll see you guys next time.